saw him Ipcrest in London, almost buried in Berlin.
Where you going now? Helsinki.
Now, Harry goes to Helsinki.
Harry Palmer, as portrayed by Michael Caine in Billion Dollar Brain, as directed by Ken Russell. And to tell you the truth, if you've seen a number of Ken Russell movies, this movie doesn't really resemble a Ken Russell movie until it gets to the very end.
My brain says the hour is at hand, and my brain is never wrong. I love my country, and my dream is to make the thing I love strong, 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 strong.
It got a lot of negative reviews when it came out, but what's putting this movie on my go-to list is the fact that this movie, along with 2001, deals with computers who have essentially taken over, or they haven't taken over. We have given them that authority to take over, and now they're about to endanger countries in Europe with germ warfare, as small little eggs are filled with various lethal doses that will practically kill half of Europe.
Harry goes to Helsinki. Temperature, ice cold. Prospects, red hot. Mission, destroy the brain before the brain destroys the world.
Because some Texan thinks that they're about to fall headlong into communist rule. Sound familiar? Well, I'm just amazed that some of these movies from the 60s seem to be plotting how we're going to be living in 2025, and I just find that totally amazing. And before we continue, if you like this review and you want to see more of it, then please hit like and subscribe, and you will be notified whenever we have more short subjects, movies, or whatnot. So the movie opens where Michael Caine has his detective agency, and then suddenly Carl Malden, someone from his past, walks in and wants him to work on another big government case, which he really doesn't want to, but they kind of twist his arm a bit. And the next thing you know, Michael Caine's off to Helsinki, where everything is given to him on a need-to-know basis. While that's probably realistic in the secret agent world, as far as we're concerned, the movie-going audience, it just seems like such an easy out, so they don't have to explain certain plot complications. What drew me to this movie, though, and what's got on my antenna, is the fact that when they meet the billion-dollar brain, well, it's kind of laughable at first. It reminds me of computer toys I used to play with as a kid. You know, just a lot of flashing lights, and then it spits out cards and all that. However, it's still pretty much filling the job that AI, ChatGPT, and a number of other programs today are doing for us. And what the whole issue of this movie is that nobody can really see who's giving the orders. It's all coming from the computer, and the computer is controlling things. And so as Michael Caine gets on the case, there's just a lot of tomfoolery going on until eventually he finds himself in Texas, where we find that this whole thing, dealing with the computers taking over, is run by a Texan, played by Ed Begley, who of course is the father of Ed Begley Jr. And at this point it starts to resemble a Ken Russell movie. You see everybody with their helmets on and in lockstep order, getting ready to invade Europe and release the germ warfare so that Europe won't become communist. We are willing to destroy everything so that nobody becomes communist. And when I saw this movie a few weeks ago, one thing that struck me is the computer itself, while it didn't have the majesty, you might say, of the HAL 9000 in 2001, it was the same thing. Now, of course, if you remember in 2001, the HAL 9000 was able to read the lips of the astronauts and knew that because of some computer errors, they were going to be disconnecting the computer. But the designers of the computer gave it free will, and so the computer began to take steps to protect itself, which would be to, of course, kill the astronauts.
Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
In this movie, The $1 Billion Brain, the computer is still in the hands of the Texans, so it doesn't seem like it's operated by AI, but the reaction, the way people just mind-numbingly listen to the computer and do whatever the computer says, take away the Texan and replace it with AI, and you pretty much have a pretty sad situation that we ourselves might be going to because of our laziness, moral laziness, and our ability to just let the computers take over everything.
The brain thinks better. The brain talks better. This is where the $1 billion brain lives, where the people who feed it play, where the man who pays for its keep rules.
Now, there was a book that came out by Isaac Asimov back around 1950 called I, Robot, and what I found interesting about that was they came out with some rules that they needed to program into the robots that they would not hurt man, they would not do anything that would bring harm to themselves. Of course, if there was a situation where the computer had to self-destruct, and then that self-destruct would wind up taking out some humans, well, then there were other rules that were invented to kind of circumvent that. So I found that interesting. And what I'm finding interesting today, as far as when we're developing these computers, is it's almost like the book of Genesis. We're giving them the ability to think independently, but how much free will do we give them to the point where the free will winds up destroying us? Those are three interesting stories I would recommend. I wouldn't necessarily recommend the Will Smith movie, but definitely the Isaac Asimov book, because even in the 50s they were able to predict the issues we would have if robots, what eventually became artificial intelligence, and if they had the free will, how that could ultimately be used against us. And the point where when everything is done for us by computers, we get so lazy that eventually they do take over, and if they're able to think and able to protect themselves, they could wind up being our masters, because that's what we want. And anyway, I would recommend watching $1 Billion Brain, if for no other reason than Michael Caine's performances, Carl Malden's performances, and then, of course, the very end where everything is straight out of a Ken Russell movie. And another thing that's interesting is that Honeywell Computers actually played a role in this movie. Why would a computer company back a movie that ultimately has some pretty negative things to say about what would happen to us if we do become too dependent on computers, where computers are just declaring war and we're just the blind serfs following along? Thank you for watching PsychoCinemaTherapy Theater. I hope I've given you something to think about and some nice movie suggestions. And again, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. My name's Tony Walker, and thanks for watching.